All right, we're going to get started. I know we have a couple of members who are with me in health. I apologize to everyone. We had several important matters to deal with in health, and we had to resolve them before I could leave, and we have some other members there. I know Representative LaHood's on the way, and our understanding is Representative Allen is out in the hall. Anybody sees him or could wave him in. We're going to go ahead and begin because we are late, and I apologize, Senator Harrell. We are all here to hear today Senate Bill 610, which is LC 339056. And do all the members have the correct version in front of you? All right, Senator Harrell? Yes, that would be right up here. I'll turn the...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It feels a little bit nostalgic to be standing here in front of the Human Relations and Aging Committee because as a former House member, I also served on the Human Relations and Aging Committee and have fond memories of the work that we did. I bring before you Senate Bill 610, which is LC 339056. I filed a separate Senate bill the beginning of last year. It was Senate Bill 208. And what the Senate Bill 208 did was set out a plan for fully funding the now comp Home and Community Services waiver during the next 5 years. That would mean that we would be funding like about 1,800 of these waiver slots per year. What I realized during the course of doing the research for this bill is that we had another issue that needed to be dealt with, and that is the pay level of the people who do the direct service work, the people who take care of the people who have this waiver. And so I realized that what we could do if we funded too many waiver slots all at once is we could overwhelm the service community. And then I began to learn about these rate studies that have to be done in order to get the provider rates approved by CMS, by the feds. And then I learned that the last rate study that was done was in 2015. And that seemed way too long ago. So this is a pretty simple bill. It's a short bill, and really what it does is requires the department to conduct these rate studies every 3 years so that we are constantly on top of any increases that need to be made so we don't get in the same situation we are right now where these direct service providers are being paid like 10, maybe a little bit more dollars an hour, and therefore are leaving the field because they can get better paying jobs that are, quite frankly, probably easier jobs in other sectors. And so we don't want to get in this situation again. So if the department then does regular rate studies, say every 3 years, then we'll stay on top of this. So that's basically what this bill does. It includes 4 waivers. We started with it now in the comp waivers. The department wanted to add the independent care waiver program as well as the, elderly and disabled waiver program. So this bill includes that as well. So that is Senate Bill 610. Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Any questions from the committee? There's 33. Is that going to be Tommy? Yep. Representative Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, on this rate provider increase, is that not done in the appropriations process through the subcommittees?
Well, this isn't an increase. This is just to do the studies so that we have the data that we need to know what rate increases we need to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. But those rate increases would be tied to revenue in the state, correct?
Yes, they'd be tied to the budgeting process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Benton, and I'm going to speak to that just to be clear so that everyone understands. That was actually a great question. So as I read this bill and have met with Senator Harrell, this bill would not impact at all how those funds are appropriated, but it would ensure that the departments know what really adequate and rates for quality care would be for these different services. And so the senator mentioned, for example, the 2015 rate study that was done for IDD providers. That was about the first time I recall that's ever being done. I know we have DCH here as well as DBHDD. I don't know that it's ever been done, or I don't recall it being done on the DCH side. So with all these different Medicaid waivers that would serve individuals in the community, it would just allow the departments to know what a really fair rate is. And then again, it would be just ensuring you agree, Senator Harrell, it would be, to Representative Benton's question, it would then be the legislature's decision about whether we fund them at those rates or not, but we would know what a good, fair rate is in the marketplace.
That's right. It provides
correct?
the data that we need to do the budgeting, right?
Correct. Okay. Other questions from the committee? We'll go back to Representative Benton first.
It's not really a question. It seems like that these rate providers were given an increase last year, but the money that was going to be used for that has not come down from the feds yet. And so that was a 5% raise, I think.
Yes, sir.
And then I think that the Appropriations Subcommittee gave another 2 or 3% on top of that. So if
Yes, sir.
the federal money comes, then there'll be a total of 8%, I think, is what we did for those people in the budget.
And Representative Benton, that was desperately needed, and you're right. Oftentimes we appropriate the state funds, which have federal match, of course, but the CMS, the federal holdup is oftentimes our problem. And over the course of the last year, I think it's fair to have it on the record, CMS has failed miserably to expeditiously get these rate increases passed on at a time when providers cannot hire the people that are needed to care for people in the community. Representative Robichaud.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this in. And I think I heard you say, but I just want to be clear, that actually doing these reviews of rates is actually a requirement of CMS to maintain our waivers. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand that?
I'm actually really not an expert on CMS policies. I'm pretty sure that these rate studies are provided to CMS when a rate increase is requested. We may have some people who are testifying who can address that question in more detail.
We'll get the department to speak to that. I will tell you this, I alluded earlier to how rare they have been done historically, so there's probably not a requirement, because if so, we haven't done them.
Right.
I think going forward, however, I think my understanding is CMS would like to see these done going forward as well. We'll get, we're going to have testimony from DCH and DBHDD, and we'll get them to speak to that in a moment.
Yes, sir. Just from my background in the healthcare industry, on the hospital side, when we had to do certain reporting to CMS, would also determine some of our reimbursement rates and levels. And if we didn't do it, that caused delays in some of our issues too, in rate adjustments. So it might be there.
I agree, and Representative, I would say this in fairness. It seems to me that we all would want to know that we're not overpaying providers. Oh, I don't care if it's hospital or anybody else. We need to know we're not overpaying. We also need to know we're not underpaying or we get poor quality. We need to know that we're within reasonable limits. Representative McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Harrell. So let me understand this completely. So the monies are both dependent on mostly federal dollars for this to work, and apparently we will give some monies at the state level. Is that correct?
Yes, these waiver programs have federal matches.
Okay, federal matches. It looks like, but it seems that the federal government is giving more than the state.
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes, I'm more familiar with the now comp waivers than I am the other waivers, but I believe it's in the range of like 2/3 federal, 1/3 state.
Okay. And you guys chose 3 years. Is there a reason why you chose 3 years as the, I guess, the level for looking at it and reviewing it? Was there a reason why you chose 3
Yes.
years rather than like 2 years? Or
Yes, I met with the department before session started, and they are actually conducting a right study right now, and they take a year or a year and a half to complete. And so that's why I have the starting date 2024, because they're actually doing one right now. So that gives them enough time to finish that one before the clock starts again. And then I just figured 3 years, because if it takes about a year and a half to do one, then 3 years seems like the right number to me, because we do have so much volatility right now in wages. But I do have a proposed amendment to change that to 4 years that I have approved.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And just to that point, so we have an amendment that we'll present in a little bit here that is going to deal with that issue. I do want to make sure that every member is aware, because there was a question a moment ago about, you spoke to Now Comp. So when you look at the list of waivers, Now and Comp are IDD waivers. They're waivers that support individuals with intellectual disabilities in the community. The Independent Care Waiver Program is a program that deals with people with traumatic brain injuries largely. They're younger people with physical disabilities. And then the Elderly and Disabled Waiver Program encompasses 2 programs that you probably hear from your constituents about. One is called the SOURCE program. The other is called the CCSP program. Both of those are under the Elderly and Disabled Waiver Program. So all of those would be captured here. And just again, in a moment, we'll speak about an amendment. We're going to add one more waiver that was left out that I felt like would be a good idea to add. And we've got an agreement that the senator and the departments are favorable to that. So we'll come back to that. But I want to make sure everybody understands, and to Representative McLeod, that's about right. The FMAP in Georgia, we front those monies. The federal match is around, we can have the department give us the precise info in a minute, but it is plus or minus 2/3, usually 2/3 to 1/3. All right, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. Representative McLeod hit on some of the things that I want to talk about, and I want to hear from some of the presenters before my other questions. But just for clarity, because I know we've talked about budget, this is non-binding as far as budget goes, these studies. Is it true that once these studies are done and presented for budgetary purposes, that they are non-binding? We're not required to respond to them? Okay.
Correct. It's just data to use to make better decisions.
Any other questions? All right.
It's been a joy to work with a chairman who knows so much about this issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. All right, I see no further questions, but before we proceed, I think we have some folks that want to speak to this matter, and we want to begin with Mr. Woody.
Yes.
Who is your constituent, as I understand it.
And I might
want
add
him to go
before,
first.
yes, I might add before I give up the microphone that I am in agreement with both the amendments that will be proposed by the committee. But I would like to introduce my constituent, Mr. Philip Woody, who has been just an amazing advocate. We have been tight at the hip for this entire session, working to get funding for the Now Comp waivers, which thank you to the House members who proposed 225 additional Now Comp waiver funds for 225 more positions, and we're working hard to match that on the Senate side, and Mr. Woody has been an instrumental part in helping us do that this year.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Woody, if you come forward, and I'm going to encourage everyone, because, forgive me, but because of my tardiness, I would ask everyone to be brief and succinct. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And hello, committee members. I am Philip Woody, father of Evan Woody, who is a 22-year-old and who suffered a traumatic brain injury at 1.5 years of age, crushing his brainstem, and he lost 20% of his brain right on the speech center. And today we do all of his ADLs, which includes bathing, toileting, shaving, dressing, and the like. Since Evan aged out of Dunwoody High School last year, he's been on a waiting list for 2 programs, and we've seen regression in his behaviors over the past year due to his lack of community and program engagement. We've engaged a behavior specialist to try to correct these behaviors. As a matter of fact, we did find a local day program for him recently, but because of these behaviors, they told my wife and me after 2 weeks that he could not come back. We've looked at many day programs that were not appropriate for Evan for one reason or the other. The point here is that the 2 programs that he's on the waiting list for have told us that there's an indefinite waiting list time period due to the labor shortage. The labor shortage can be for several reasons, but the main reason I believe is because the direct service professionals or caregivers in these programs are paid so little. As you have heard, they've been paid by the state approximately $10 per hour, which is less than a babysitter, less than a dog walker, less than a grocery clerk, and less than a fast food worker. This is a real challenge, considering that these caregivers are caring for the most vulnerable population in the state of Georgia. I believe I heard from Judy Fitzgerald, director of the DBHDD, that they are proposing a 1% increase for these providers. Tommy mentioned, 5% and 3%. Well, 1% of $10 an hour is 10 cents per hour. It's not even $1 a day. So whether it's 1%, 5%, 3% of nothing is still nothing. These paid caregivers need to be given a fair wage. I've also heard from legislators that the special needs families just need to do more. I'm here to tell you that we are doing all we can while trying to earn a living for their futures and for our futures. Many of these families have to hold a job while caring for their children at home during the day and getting up with their children several times a night. There are families in Georgia with newborns and others who have been here for a lifetime who are considering moving out of the state because Georgia does a poor job of caring for the most vulnerable population. That's bad for the citizens and it's bad for business. The legislators and governors should be required to walk a week or a month in the shoes of these families to understand what they need and the value that they bring to the community. And as for the now comp waiver waiting list, I've talked about this until I'm blue in the face over the past several years. 7,000 people who DBHDD has qualified for services, but the governor and the General Assembly won't give them funding for those services. They receive funding each year for approximately 1.5% of those on the waiting list, which leaves 98.5% unfunded and unserved. Do we ration our state's children's education or health care? Then why do you ration services for the most vulnerable population? Between the poor funding of service providers and a poor track record for funding the intellectual and developmentally disabled waiting list, I would confidently say that the state is not fulfilling its obligations to the Department of Justice. Committee, Georgia can do better. Don't ration the resources of the Georgia citizens with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and give their support providers a fair wage.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Woody? Okay. Say again? Oh, you want to make a comment? All right.
It's the microphone.
Use that, yeah. You should be on.
I would just like to thank you for your comments that you made this afternoon. And it is my hope that Georgia will do better for the kids and for families that have with this disability situation and problems, because we all know that the people that really do the work, they are the less paid. And it is time that we raise the bar and pay people for all the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative McLeod.
Echo that sentiment. We brag about being the #1 place to do business. We need to brag about being the #1 place to care about the people that are actually providing the service, and the taxpayers are the ones that elevate this government and to make it work with our tax dollars. And those tax dollars and anyone who pays taxes deserve a return on investment. Thank you.
And I'd also like to say that, I come from Dunwoody. It's a combination of Republicans and Democrats. Every one of them that I just, explain this issue to, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, say, this is how I want to spend my money, my tax money.
Yes.
And if it's Capital One or Walmart or some of these new businesses coming into Georgia, do they know about these issues? Do they have employees who have disabilities? So, should
Thank you
let them
so
know.
much thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you also for what you've said. Ever since I've been on this committee, look, it seems like the magic pay scale is $10. And there is very little that you can do with $10 an hour. I believe that is why there are so many people out there working 3 and 4 jobs and having to neglect their families in order to take care of others. And they do it. Look like, I believe, Mr. Chairman, this committee needs to look at what kind of minimum pay salary, the individuals should be making. Young people are making more than that, working at Burger King, working in some of the grocery stores, and they're not having to clean up after our people, and they are our people in the communities. And I just think that people do not know how low they are paid to take care of their relatives in the various homes and facilities. I don't know how to get it up, and I'm hoping that as my tenure continue, that maybe we can find a way to have some kind of minimum amount of money. Because if they start at 10 and 1%, like you said, is 10 cents, they will never move up.
That's right.
They will never move out.
I'd also like to say that,
It's depressing.
agree. I totally agree.
Thank you,
And,
Mr. Woody.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Jackson. And just to be clear, so everyone is aware, just as an education, the rates, as they go up to providers who then make decisions on how they increase their staff. I suspect that all of the increases from last year went completely to wage increases. So it wouldn't necessarily be a 10% increase. It may well be, all of that increase may go directly, for example, to wages for direct support staff. It's the provider's decision how they carve that up. But at any rate, doesn't take anything away from the points that were made. We clearly need rates that are adequate to serve people and serve them well. All right, we need Brian Whitmire, and then Lauren Paulo will be on deck.
All right. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to comment on Senate Bill 610. I am Ryan Whitmire. I'm the President and CEO of Developmental Disability Ministries. I'm also a member of the SPAD Board of Directors, and my comments reflect SPAD's position as well as the position of my organization. We appreciate the work that Senator Harrell has did in crafting this important legislation, the support of the Senate and Health and Human Services Committee and the entire Senate for moving Senate Bill 610 forward. IDD, Home and Community-Based Services, has long suffered a dramatic workforce shortage. Hourly rates, as we've discussed, have been based on a study from 2015, and that rate is $10.62. no one can live on that, but in addition to that, you can't find quality staff at that level. And again, you can go to Burger King and you can go to Chick-fil-A and you can go all these other places and do better for your family. But the people that are most vulnerable need more. The consequences of not benefiting from any routine rate adjustments over so many years has caused a crisis level in the workforce shortage. This is impacting quality, it's impacting health and safety, and it's greatly impacting provider capacity. And so when you have providers now who are reluctant to actually serve new individuals. You have providers that are reluctant to open new homes. All of this is because it is an underfunded service that is now resulting in lack of staffing, and you can't serve people. When you take in all of the negative consequences of these facts and you look at what Georgia wants to do to eliminate the waiting list, and if you implemented DBHDD's 5-year plan, you will not have enough of a provider network to serve the people due to there's not enough workers. And so it's going to create a new waiting list. It's going to create a totally different category. It's going to create a waiting list of people with waivers without a provider. And so with that said, SB 610 makes huge strides in assuring that we have a viable rate structure that is updated routinely, which will ultimately require legislative financial support to implement. SB 610 offers real opportunities to once and for all support the 8,000 people waiting for services that desperately need services. And so it's going to take a legislative commitment to support what future rates reveal, like what things actually cost to do better in Georgia. And if we do that, Georgia can become a national leader in supporting our most vulnerable citizens. And so thank you for your time, and we really do appreciate this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmire. Lauren Paulo and Whitney Fuchs is on deck.
Great. Hi, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Always Caring Home Care, a statewide provider of community-based personal care services to nearly 4,000 Georgia seniors and persons with disabilities, I would like to voice our support for Senate Bill 610. Georgia's HCBS providers are facing a workforce crisis, as you all know, which has only been heightened by the pandemic. The current rate framework in Georgia leaves providers unable to adequately compete for qualified staff in this ever-changing labor market, which in turn impacts providers' ability to provide services to those vulnerable populations. Ultimately, inadequate staffing levels leaves Georgia's most vulnerable waiting for services or not receiving the services they're eligible for, which often results in these individuals being placed into expensive institutional settings. Medicaid providers, just like other industries, are feeling the impact of record levels of inflation and increased costs of doing business. However, we are rate takers, not rate makers, which means we're unable to unilaterally increase the price for our services when costs go up. A triennial study of reimbursement rates would help to identify the gaps that exist in the rate framework and propose updated rates that capture the current cost of providing services. Most important, these studies would provide you with the real data you need in making important budgetary decisions moving forward. We appreciate the opportunity to voice our support for this important legislation and ask for your consideration, and they wish they could have been here with you today, but they sent me in their stead, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paulo. Whitney Fuchs and Jenny Helms is on deck.
Thank you, Chairman. How you doing? My name is Whitney Fuchs, and I'm the CEO of In Community, and I'm also a board member of SPAD, SPAD is the provider association that represents providers who support people with IDD throughout Georgia. My comments today reflect SPAD's position as well as the position of In-Community. A little history. I've been doing this since 1984. My whole career has been working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Matter of fact, I started my career as a life skills trainer, which is in other parlance, a direct support professional. So I've worked my way all the way up from the direct support position into the position of CEO of an organization that serves 1,500 people a year here in Atlanta. We very much appreciate Senator Harrell's support in getting this bill through, especially the Senate and the Senate committees, Health and Human Services Committee, and the entire Senate for voting for this. In my career, I've learned a couple of things, just a couple. The first is that all change is incremental. We'd love to see sweeping changes to the impact of salaries of our direct support professionals. We realize there are a lot of priorities, and that the priority for serving people with intellectual and developmental disabilities is oftentimes lower on the totem pole. We appreciate the opportunity for raising it up and identifying that this is a step. It's an incremental step towards creating some wage improvement for our direct support professionals. In community, we have about 565 employees if we were fully staffed. We have 166 openings. 157 of those openings are direct support professionals. We pay $12 an hour. Can't find anybody. Our overtime is currently at 26% of our payroll. So that gives you an idea from the business perspective of what this does to organizations. When we get requests for people who want services, the first thing that we look at, are they going to require exceptional staffing? If they require one-on-one staffing, the answer is usually we don't have the capacity to serve them because we cannot find the staff to give them the supports that they need. This means the people in our care, people needing care, the people who have the most intensive needs are the ones that are not going to be served. This reluctance that we experience, because I tell people we need to fill these openings because filling the openings at the group homes increases our census, helps our bottom line. The fact of the matter is if we can't serve them adequately, we can't serve them with a good quality, we don't need to be doing it. The negative consequence about all this is that when we come time to finally address the waiting list here in Georgia, if we don't have the resources, the staff, to be able to deliver that, we're still going to have a waiting list. It's just going to be a different one, as Ryan said. Senate Bill 610 makes a significant step forward. It doesn't answer the question about how we come to you over the years of hat in hand asking for a 5% rate increase. Can we please have this? We get it approximately every 8 to 10 years. Can we please have this? But it does give some evidence of where we should be. It's an incremental step forward. That step forward is important to take, and we appreciate your support of this bill. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, sir. I think we have one question. I do want to say one thing first, that I think your comments, I appreciate them, but I do want to make one thing very clear. I think everyone on this committee needs to be aware. I think Georgia's done a remarkable job over the last quite a few years of deinstitutionalizing the intellectually disabled in this state. So I want everyone here to recognize we have doubled down on serving people on Medicaid waivers to ensure that people get care in the community, and that always needs to be recognized, and I appreciate the departments and our leadership for that. Representative McLeod.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit. I can hear the desperation right now, and you said you've been doing this for quite some time, and you did mention that, you know, you've come year after year to ask for this. What has been the resistance, or what has been the pushback when you come to ask for this? What was just not believe in you, or they felt the workforce was abundant at the time? I mean, I'm trying to understand, because obviously the desperation and the need is there. I will say this. I visited all 16 schools in my district, and the incorporation of children with severe disability inside the school has just been wonderful. Most of these kids feel a part of, and the other students that are able-bodied are very welcoming and really make those students that are that have any kind of severe disability welcome, and then it teaches them empathy, which is a wonderful thing. I just kind of wanted to understand in some ways why this has become to the point now where we're at a desperation, because taking care of people is a necessity for, especially when they can't take care of themselves. And I'm sorry that we're at this place right now.
I appreciate those remarks. I believe that over time, we've seen the impact of the pandemic on the increase of wages. I'm a boomer, and millennials and Gen Xers have a different, Gen Zers have a different view of work than we did. And I think that we're impacting that. I do think that people want a livable wage, and that's important. I remember when I was a direct support professional, I was going to school at the time. I had 2 jobs and went to school full-time. And one of those jobs was full-time. So I worked Saturdays, I worked Sundays, I went to school in the evenings, and I worked an 8-hour day during the week. And so I can tell you that that energy level doesn't exist for me right now. But I see a lot of my staff doing that. And I don't think that's a very, I don't want to be that employer.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Helms, and Kai Yoke is on deck.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and Senator Harrell, I'm with Leading Age Georgia, and we're the association that supports not-for-profits that serve older adults. And we house the Georgia Adult Day Services Association of Georgia. And I want to tell you that during the pandemic, about 30 to 40% of adult day centers closed permanently due to the financial impact. And it's very important that we keep the funding going to keep these open so that people who need the services can receive them. But the points that have been made about staffing are really the vital point. And the truth is that when long-term care providers, adult day, in-home, nursing homes can't get staff, it does reflect what you said. It's because the staff can't work at such a low wage and make a living and put food on the table for their families. And so we think that this bill is very important. But one of the things we want to make sure of is that this bill doesn't hold back funding over the years, the incremental increases. Because when we went to DCH a while back about the rates for the bus services, because our members rely on services, we were told, well, we need to do a study, and that kind of held back the transportation providers from getting the rate increases that we felt that they needed to provide good services. So as we do this and our members all see inflation every year, we want to make sure that the inflation can be kept up with, so that the wages can be kept up with, so that the staffing problem does not get worse. The other thing is we want real studies done on the cost of services. About 3 years ago, we were before your committee, and we did a nationwide study on the cost of what other personal care homes were paid for in the country, and it was like $70 a day, and at that time, Georgia was only paying $50 a day. Well, what do you do with the difference of that $20? It's in quality care, it's in the staffing, it's in the food, it's in the activities. And so what we're asking is that we really do look at these costs of different services for the waiver programs, that we make sure that it doesn't hold up increases annually as we see rates increase for staffing and other services, and that maybe we even use services of like the Georgia Health Policy Center that does such a great job, because we don't want studies to slow down payments to the providers because they need the money in order to provide the care. I will tell you that our members tell us that their private pay in the VA kind of makes up what Medicaid doesn't pay, but we've got to get towards paying what it really costs for services, because otherwise we'll lose more staffing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helms. You have a question from Representative LaHood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Ms. Helms, for being here to speak in support of this bill and for sharing your vast experience on this issue.
Thank you.
I totally agree that staffing is the key to providing a quality service. If providers aren't able to recruit and retain quality staff, they're not going to be able to deliver, quality services.
That's right.
I know you have experience across a vast range of healthcare services, particularly for the elderly and others. Would you, in your opinion, does the private pay senior care industry struggle with the same type staffing issues?
I think that they do struggle with them. Everybody's struggling with staffing, and it has to do with how much the staff gets paid and trying to, make a living. But I will say that some of the providers that are for-profit might be able to pay a slightly higher margin than what the ones on Medicaid do, because they don't get paid enough to pay the wages. So.
Right. So the ability of a provider to pay a competitive wage is key to providing a good service. And so I've also heard today in some other testimony that there's a waiting list, 8,000 or 9,000 people waiting to be served in these settings. And so I know this isn't today's issue, but I did just want to throw out there that the private pay providers could possibly serve some of these people who need to be served if they're able to operate efficiently as possible and keep their costs lower so that they can pay their staff more. And
that's right.
Just wanted to throw that out there, that government overreach and regulation is sometimes a problem in those private pay settings that drives cost higher.
I totally agree. And I'd like to see more providers be able to provide the services for the people who need them.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Helms. All right. Kai Yoke with Beata. And if we could, our two departmental representatives, Mr. Polachek and Ms. Sylvan, we may briefly hear from you after. All right.
Awesome.
Ms. Yoke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this committee for the opportunity to testify. I'll keep my comments brief, as I think the challenges that providers are facing as it pertains to workforce have been well articulated. We're certainly feeling that at Beata. We are a national not-for-profit organization providing services across the home health care continuum in 23 states. Here in Georgia, we focus primarily on serving medically fragile children through the Georgia Pediatric program or the GAP program. So just want to thank Senator Harrell for this bill and just testify in support of an amendment that I know that Chairman Petrie is going to make today to make sure that GAP is included in this bill, as well as it's not technically a waiver service, but a state plan amendment service. And I'll join Ginny in articulating a concern that to make sure that funds are not held up on an annual basis because of this bill. We think it's a great idea to make sure there's a mechanism in place to ensure both the department and the state know what the need for these reimbursement rate increases are. Just want to make sure that we don't see increases only happening on a 3-year basis as well. But thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Oh, we have a question. Representative Scott has a question. or a comment?
A comment. I would just like to know, have anyone ever looked at the provider? How much does a provider make opposed to how much the workers make? Is there any type of thing that shows how much does a provider get, the pay of providers? What are their hourly wage?
For nursing?
Yes, for care.
So Chairman Petrie alluded to this, but the state sets what the Medicaid reimbursement rate will be, and with those funds, providers have to cover administrative costs, regulatory costs that Representative LaHood referenced. So for nursing specifically, we are at and $37 for LPNs, $42 for RNs, and providers are paying, or specifically is paying mid-20s for nurses after having to cover administrative costs. Yes.
Very good, thank you. All right, Mr. Polachek. And y'all can come up together or separately or however y'all prefer it. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you. My name is Michael Polachek, Director of Legislative Affairs, Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. First, I want to thank the Senator and the Chairman for working on this measure, and want to express our support of the amendment extending the requirement of the rate study be conducted from 3 to 4 years. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for DBHDD? Okay, Ms. Sylvan. Ms. Sylvan represents the Department of Community Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brandy Sylvan, Director of Government Relations for the Department of Community Health. I want to echo Michael's comments and just say we're supportive of this bill. I think it'll help the appropriations make informed decisions, and we're also supportive of the extension to 4 years. To your previous conversations about CMS, I don't know if it's a requirement that the rate study is submitted, but I will say the last 3 increases we've asked for, we've had to provide a rate study. It's definitely helpful information to have. And the FMAP, that was correct, that it's generally about 2/3 federal and 1/3 state. I think right now it's right around 66%. So.
Thank you, Ms. Sylvan. And just to be clear, the department, and I've spoken to you and to the Senator about an amendment. And my understanding is the department sounds like, first of all, you believe this is good policy to help you to formulate rates going forward. Moreover, the amendment from 3 to 4 years would be better, an improvement, and I think the Senate is in agreement. And we're adding the Georgia Pediatric program. Is it fair to say the Department of Community Health believes that to be a good move as well?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, that's important to me. We do these things, and we need to make sure we know how you guys feel on them. And before we complete that, the Georgia Pediatric program, very important. Just so you, obviously, it is a skilled service. Just for our members to know that is for very medically fragile children to keep them out of hospitals by serving them at home. And so we're adding that to this bill in the amendment you have before you. Are there any questions of the committee for the department? All right, I see none. Okay, thank you. Thanks to both of you for being here. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bill? Everyone is on our list has been checked off. Anyone else who wishes to speak on this bill? All right, see none, so we will proceed. All right. What is the will of the committee? Okay, got a move do pass. Do we hear a second? Okay, we have a second. All right, now, any discussion before I explain, although we've already alluded to it, this amendment? Any discussion other than this amendment that the chair is going to introduce? Any discussion? All right, I see none. So before you, if everyone and anyone here that's interested, we have copies up here. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. My
Oh,
fault.
that's okay. I was really pushing it to make the motion, but I do want to say, since we do have some discussion, that this is a very personal matter to me. Most people know that before I ran for office, I worked with the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. And this is an issue that has been a problem for a very, very long time. And it's not lost. Some of the words that were used were quality, access, capacity, health, safety. All those are a direct correlation to the suppressed reimbursement rates that we pay. I know the state has done what you call, Chairman, a good job, but we also have to acknowledge most of that good job was done because we were under federal review. It is hopeful with this legislation that we can have these studies, but I am hoping even more that we respond to them in the right way. When we see these, we don't debate and haggle over money, but we do what's right by Georgians who depend on these waivers and these services to have a quality of life for themselves and their family. So I appreciate you, Senator, for bringing this forward, and it is, like I said, my hope that we not only pass it and do the studies, but that we actually respond to what they tell us to make sure that we can increase our provider capacity and also the quality of care that we give.
Thank you, Representative Allen. All right, if all the members will look at the bill and the amendment you have before you, here's what we want to do. On line 13, and Betsy, you have this, you have a copy of this. We're going to replace the word 3 with the word 4 to allow adequate time for the department to accomplish these rate studies. And then on line 17, we're going to insert after ICWP, which is the Independent Care Waiver Program, comma, we're going to add the Georgia Pediatric Program. So we will capture all of these programs that are targeted to serving people in the community in this measure. All right, so on the amendment, any discussion on this amendment? Okay, Representative McLeod.
I know session is coming to an end, and this has been a committee that at first I didn't know exactly what was going to be, but we've done some pretty important work here in trying to make sure that we protect Georgians fully, and I hope that the work will continue. I do hope that people will take it seriously, that we will not just wait for pandemics to happen to care about the citizens that we serve in this state. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, Representative LaHood.
Just move to
All right.
pass as
Got a move to pass the amendment. I got a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. All right. Now, any more discussion before we take up the bill itself? Okay? All right. Senate Bill 610 as amended. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? As it did in the Senate, it has passed unanimously. Senator Harrell, thank you, and we'll get the bill signed up here for you. Thank you. We are adjourned.